That's right, it's reading time. Hello, hello, and good evening. Hello, Core. Hello, Jam Jam. As always, it's a pleasure to see you guys. Shoulder models here. There has been work. There has been work done on something new. It's of course going to take a long time, but there has been progress. There's the licking. Yep, there it is right there. Yeah, something actually personal. Because as I've had to reveal before, the previous model and this one are of course pre-made models that are easily attainable in stores. For cheap too. Wink. So something more personal. Something, yeah, we're working on it. Remember the last time when Solar was getting on my case for not providing details? There you go. So, how I feel that process is going to go is first, gonna hammer out a design, and then I'm gonna work with good old Frank to make a 3D model because he's very talented, super skilled. I believe in him. And then when I have the money and can find, an artist to make it a live 2D model, then we'll have both. So we can have 3D shenanigans and, of course, a nice personal model for these sorts of things. Bye-bye. Potatoes. Potatoes. Welcome in. Also, I do have other news as well, such as voice acting news. Suggestions for the 2D if you need them, go ahead and send them my way. I, of course, will take a look and see how I like it. Hello, hello. Welcome in. I feel like I need to get like a chibi model as well. Just become a little gremlin. That'd be fun. Oh yeah, voice acting news. Voice acting news. So, turns out that yesterday, day before yesterday, on Monday, the days have workshop, we did not do workshop and instead we went over the competition footage and gave critiques to everyone for scenes that were shown based on 2 criteria. That's the word. And while that was going on, the workshop staff made an announcement saying, hey, listen, if any of you are interested in either becoming an ADR director, learning how to do the editing stuff that we do, or becoming a coach, well, we are completely free. So, volunteers, come on in. We got space. So I thought about it, and thinking back, I'm like, I'm always helping out everyone. I tend to give pretty good advice. I'm not saying it. Hi, Julie. And, I like helping people. That's usually why the teams I'm on tend to get best team. Hilariously enough. No, we cannot. I wish you could, but you can't. It's okay, Jam. So yeah, I decided to contact the staff after workshop was over, saying, yeah, I guess I'm interested in becoming a coach. So then one of them went over to the leader of that branch, and I got pulled aside as they tell me, so I hear you're interested in becoming a coach. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And they said, good. I'm so excited because I think this is the next step you need for your voice acting career. Because with you helping others, you'll learn new techniques yourself. And being on staff, you'll of course get access to insider knowledge. And I'm like, well, that does sound pretty good. And then I hear that apparently they've been scouting me for a long time. Like, as soon as I show any interest, they were gonna jump on that, and jump on that they did. And I'm like, oh, well. That's awesome. So, I do have to talk with the founder of the guild sometime. I've given him my availability. We'll see when he's free and when he wants to talk and just have a little powwow. Just to get to know me, and I'll get to know him. Bada bing, bada boom. I will help out with coaching as well as, I don't know if I'll get to participate, but maybe. We'll see. Actually, being that I'll be on staff, that does mean I do kind of get shortcutted into Masters Division stuff. Ah, scary. Like Fairy Tale Guild, yes, including being full of weirdos, and instead of having magical powers, we bring characters to life, as long as they're animated on a screen. Yes, that is what that means. That's my magical power, true. Bringing stories to life. Characters as well. That is what a lore keeper does, of course. Sharing these stories, legends, and lore, and giving them new life in the hearts of everyone around. Yeah. Speaking of stories, of course everyone's here for one thing and one thing alone. Me. But in second place, it's books. Sorry. You can't wait for the day where I'm brought into the top films and animations. That's exciting. I hope so. It'll probably happen. Maybe it's like an extra or something. They'll be all like, you can get that weird voice guy. I hear about Campfire Cooking in Another World Season 2. It was announced? Oh, that's exciting. I did not hear. Yeah, coming out soon. Yay! Thank you, Julie. I will do my best, which I always do. Oh man, it was... The critiques were pretty funny though. So, at first when we were going over the scenes, we started of course with the beginners division, and you're always on anime news. That's good. I like to know about things, but I don't keep up with news. Pretty much they start with some of the scenes that our newcomers in the building had participated in. You'll be back? Sounds good. Are you okay? Take your time with whatever you need. On this core too. Oh, and I was dreading when I had the realization, oh yeah, we'll be going over scenes. It'll be fun. Wait, that means we're gonna go over my scene. Oh no. So then, They do a little pause and they say, for this next scene, who's heard of a little anime called One Punch Man? And I just go, oh no! And they go, that's right, we're doing your scene now. Everyone turns to look at me and I'm like, no. It's funny and awkward when everyone turns and does that at the same time. It did get good amounts of praise. And the critiques, though, were, of course, really funny. Because, like, while people liked my delivery, some people, of course, wanted more of an anger, more of a bite, and I'm like, sorry, I got it too far away from the mic. It was supposed to be louder. And then, Jam, that's a lot of licking. And apparently, when I perform, my voice sounded too clean, too corporate was the word that they used. That threw me for a loop. I'm like, corporate? And like, I can see what they mean, but like, what a word. I mean, they do kind of have a point. Like, it's, when I talk, I try to keep everything like as clean as possible to enunciate my words with utmost proficiency, especially if I am performing. But some people think that sounds a little, not robotic, but kind of AI-ish. That's why every time I'm on VR chat, they're like, is that an AI? And I'm like, nope, that's just me. That is just me. That's right, utmost proficiency. So like, while that's good for some characters, other ones need to sound a bit more grungy, a bit dirtier, a bit more texture, more, you know, more humanity to them, I guess. And then someone else pulled me over to the side during break, and they're just all like, that's just your Sonic voice you used up there. And I'm like, ha ha, you noticed. And they're like, I like it, it was good. You always pull it out when you're doing like shonen stuff. And I'm like, it's the perfect shonen voice. But yeah, that was my Monday. I worked yesterday, fell asleep, and forgot to stream. So hi everybody, we're here now. Have I done my Kermit voice for them? Yes. And I even gave them Miss Piggy. I didn't even know I had it in me. And the answer is I barely had it in me. Like, if I can do Kermit, then I can do Miss Piggy. It's basically the same, just higher pitched. Want to hear this? I thought I sent it to you. I thought I sent you the Sonic Boom scene, Julie. And I've done it before, Jam. I'm not going to say that in the lovely ASMR setting. But all right. Now that we've gone over the stuff, we've had some fun. It's time to get back into The Queen of Sorcery, Book 2 of the Belgariad series. We're on Chapter 7, where we've just been introduced to Mandoralin, Sir Mandoralin. Unfortunately, Leldoran has been stabbed by venomous claws, and while first aid was successful, things aren't looking so good for our heroes. They're gonna go to like a fort nearby. So, go. Chapter 7. Sir Mandoralin, Baron of Elmandor, was a man of slightly more than medium height. His hair was black and curly, his eyes were deep blue, and he had a resonant voice in which he expressed firmly held opinions. Garion did not like him. The knight's towering self-confidence and egotism so pure that there was a kind of innocence about it seemed to confirm the worst of Leldorn's stark pronouncements about men braids. You rewatched and you're giggling? Wonderful. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh. Suddenly. Wish Tales, thank you for the raid. Welcome in, everybody, and goodness gracious, all the follows. A Bunny Hop, Pink091, Memble1, thank you for following. EP Catboy, with the strawberries coming in. Dark Icon as well, thank you for following. Hello everyone, I am Cassian Radley, an ASMRtist mostly focused on reading books. Finally reading you back. Hey, thank you, Wish Tales. I've been alright. I took a bit of a break for a while and now I'm back. How was your stream? Did you have a good time? How about everyone else? Did you enjoy their stream? I'm sure you did. Lifelike Spore, thank you for following. Yeah, it had been quite a bit. It's lovely. Oh, that's great to hear. And yeah, I'm doing well. Just settling in. We just started reading, actually, so you picked a good time. For everyone just coming in, the book that I am reading is called The Queen of Sorcery, and it is book 2 of the Belgariad series. You're going to bed? Sounds good. Rest easy, Dark Rykon. Hope to see you in the future as well. We're on chapter 7, just began, and Julie's going to bed as well. Good night. Sleep well, Julie. Don't let Miss Piggy bite. Forgot to armor up. So, we'll go ahead and get back into it then. So everyone, kick back, relax, and let the words whisk you to new worlds unseen and unheard. Wow, Julie, what a sentence. To make matters even worse, Aunt Pole seemed quite willing to accept the knight's flatteries at face value. As they rode through the continuing drizzle along the Great West Road, Garion noted with some satisfaction that his companions appeared to share his opinion. Rak's expression spoke louder than words. Silk's eyebrows lifted sardonically at each of the knight's pronouncements, and Durnick scowled. Garion, however, had little time to sort out his feelings about the membrate. He rode close beside the litter, upon which Leldorn tossed painfully as the Algroth poison seared in his wounds. He offered his friend what comfort he could, and exchanged frequent worried looks with Aunt Pole, who rode nearby. During the worst of Leldorn's paroxysms, Garion helplessly held the young man's hand, unable to think of anything else to do to ease his pain. "Bear thine infirmity with fortitude, good youth," Mandorelin cheerfully advised the injured Asturian after a particularly bad bout that left Leldorn gasping and moaning. "This discomfort of thine is but an illusion. Thy mind can put it to rest if thou wouldst have it so." F-O-G. That's exactly the kind of comfort I'd expect from a membrate, Leldorn retorted from between clenched teeth. I think I'd rather you didn't ride so close. Your opinions smell almost as bad as your armor. Mandaround's face flushed slightly. The venom which doth rage through thy body, if our injured friend hath, it would seem, bereft him of civility as well as sense, he observed coldly. Leldorn half raised himself in the litter, as if to respond hotly, but the sudden movement seemed to aggravate his injury, and he lapsed into unconsciousness. His wounds are grave, Mandaround stated. Thy poultice, Lady Polgara, may not suffice to save his life. He needs rest, she told him. Try not to aggravate him so much. I will place myself beyond the reach of his eye, Mandaround replied. Through no fault of mine own, my visage is hateful to him, and doth stir him to unhealthful choler. He moved his warhorse ahead at a canter until he was some distance in front of the rest of them. Do they all talk like that? Garion asked with a certain rancor. These and thous and doths? Membrates tend to be very formal, Antbull explained. You'll get used to it. I think it sounds stupid, Garion muttered darkly, glaring after the knight. An example of good manners won't hurt you all that much, Garion. They rode on through the dripping forest as evening settled among the trees. And Paul? Garion asked finally. Yes, dear? What was that Grolm talking about when he said that about you and Tarek? It's something Tarek said once when he was raving. The Grolms took it seriously, that's all. She pulled her dark cloak tighter about her. Doesn't it worry you? Not particularly. What was that prophecy the Grolm was talking about? I didn't understand any of that. The word prophecy, for some reason, stirred something very deep in him. Marin Codex, she answered. It's a very old version, and the writing's almost illegible. It mentions companions, the bear, the rat, and the man who will live twice. It's the only version that says anything about them. Nobody knows for certain that it really means anything. Grandfather thinks it does, doesn't he? Your grandfather has a number of curious notions. Old things impress him, probably because he's so old himself. Arian was going to ask her about this prophecy that seemed to exist in more than one version, but Leldorn moaned then, and they both immediately turned to him. They arrived shortly thereafter at a Tolnedran hostel with thick whitewashed walls and a red tile roof. Antipole saw to it that Leldorn was placed in a warm room, and she spent the night sitting by his bed caring for him. Garion padded worriedly down the dark hallway in his stocking feet a half-dozen times before morning to check on his friend, but there seemed to be no change. By daybreak, the rain had let up. They started out in the grayish dawn, with Mandarellen still riding some distance ahead, until they reached at last the edge of the dark forest and saw before them the vast, open expanse of the Arendish Central Plain, uncolored and sere in the last few weeks of winter. The knight stopped there and waited for them to join him, his face somber. What's the trouble? Silk asked him. Mandarellen pointed gravely at a column of black smoke rising from a few miles out on the plain. What is it? Silk inquired, his rat face puzzled. Smoke in Arendia can mean but one thing, the knight replied, pulling on his plumed helmet. Bide here, dear friends. I will investigate, but I fear the worst. He set his spurs to the flanks of his charger and leaped forward at a thunderous gallop. Welcome back, Cor. Wait, Barak roared after him. Yeah, we did, Cor. Welcome. Wait, Barak roared after him, but Mandarellen rode on obliviously. That idiot, the big Trek fumed. I'd better go with him, in case there's trouble. It isn't necessary, Leldorn advised weakly from his litter. Not even an army would dare to interfere with him. I thought you didn't like him, Barak said, a little surprised. I don't, Leldorn admitted, but he's the most feared man in Arendia. Even in Astoria, we've heard of Sir Mandarellen. No sane man would stand in his way. I drew back into the shelter of the forest and waited for the knight to come back. When he returned, his face was angry. It is as I feared, he announced. A war doth rage in our path, a senseless war, since the two barons involved are kinsmen and the best of friends. And go around it? Silk asked. Nay, Prince Keldar, Mandarellen replied. Their conflict is so widespread that we would be waylaid ere we had gone 3 leagues. I must, it appear, buy us passage. Think they'll take money to let us pass? Dernick asked dubiously. In Arendia, there is another way to make such purchase, Goodman, Mandarellen responded. I prevail upon thee to obtain 6 or 8 stout poles, perhaps 20 feet in length, and about as thick as my wrist at the butt. Of course. Dernick took up his axe. What have you got in mind? Barak rumbled. I will challenge them, Mandarellen announced calmly. One or all. No true knight could refuse me without being called craven. Wilt thou be my second and deliver my challenge, my lord? What if you lose? Silk suggested. Lose? Mandarellen seemed shocked. I? Lose? Let it pass, Silk said. By the time Dernick had returned with the poles, Mandarellen had finished tightening the various straps beneath his armor. Taking one of the poles, he vaulted into his saddle and started at a rolling trot toward a column of smoke with Barak at his side. Is this really necessary, Father? Aunt Pole asked. We have to get through, Pole, Mr. Wolf replied. Don't worry, Mandarellen knows what he's doing. After a couple of miles, they reached the top of a hill and looked down at the battle below. 2 grim, black castles faced each other across a broad valley, and several villages dotted the plain on either side of the road. The nearest village was in flames, with a great pillar of greasy smoke rising from it to a lead-gray sky overhead, and serfs armed with scythes and pitchforks were attacking each other with a sort of mindless ferocity on the road itself. Some distance off, pikemen were gathering for a charge, and the air was thick with arrows. On 2 opposing hills, parties of armored knights with bright-colored pennons on their lances watched the battle. Great siege engines lofted boulders into the air to crash down on the struggling men, killing, so far as Garion could tell, friend and foe indiscriminately. The valley was littered with the dead and the dying. Stupid, Wolf muttered darkly. No one I know has ever accused Arends of brilliance, Silk observed. Mandarellen set his horn to his lips and blew a shattering blast. The battle paused as the soldiers and serfs all stopped to stare up at him. sounded his horn again, and then again, each brassy note a challenge in itself. As the two opposing bodies of knights galloped through the knee-high, winter-yellowed grass to investigate, Commander Rowland turned to Barak. "If it please thee, my lord," he requested politely, "deliver my challenge as soon as they approach us." Barak shrugged. "It's your skin," he noted. He eyed the advancing knights, and then lifted his voice in a great roar. Sorry, kind of fumbled that one. "Sir Mandaralin, Baron of Omandor, desires entertainment," he declared. "It would amuse him if each of your parties would select a champion to joust with him. If, however, you are all such cowardly dogs that you have no stomach for such a contest, cease this brawling and stand aside so that your betters may pass." "Splendidly spoken, my Lord Barak," Mandaralin said with admiration. "I've always had a way with words," Barak replied modestly. The two parties of knights warily rode closer. "For shame, my lords," Mandaralin chided them. "You will gain no honor in this sorry war. Sir Derrigan, what hath caused this contention?" "An insult, Sir Mandaralin," the noble replied. He was a large man, and his polished steel helmet had a gold circlet riveted above the visor. "An insult so vile that it may not go unpunished." "It was I who was insulted," a noble on the other side contended hotly. "What was the nature of this insult, Sir Ulterain?" Mandaralin inquired. Both men looked away uneasily, and neither spoke. "We have gone to war over an insult which cannot even be recalled?" Mandaralin said incredulously. "I had thought, my lords, that ye were serious men, but I now perceive my error." "Don't the nobles of Arendia have anything better to do?" Barak asked in a voice heavy with contempt. "Of Sir Mandaralin the bastard we have all heard," a swarthy knight in black enameled armor sneered. "But who is this red-bearded ape who so maligns his betters?" "You're going to take that?" Barak asked Mandaralin. "It's more or less true," Mandaralin admitted with a pained look, "since there was some temporary irregularity about my birth, which still raises questions about my legitimacy. This knight is Sir Haldoran, my third cousin, twice removed. Since it's considered unseemly in Arendia to spill the blood of kinsmen, he thus cheaply gains reputation for boldness by casting the matter in my teeth." "Stupid custom," Barak grunted. "In Shrek, kinsmen kill each other with more enthusiasm than they kill strangers." "Alas," Sir Mandaralin sighed, "this is not Shrek." "Would you be offended if I dealt with this?" Barak asked politely. "Not at all." Barak moved closer to the swarthy knight. "I am Barak, Earl of Trelheim," he announced in a loud voice, "kinsman to King Anheg of Trek, and I see that certain nobles in Arendia have even fewer manners than they have brains." "The lords of Arendia are not impressed by the self-bestowed titles of the pigsty kingdoms of the north," Sir Haldoran retorted coldly. "I find your words offensive, friend," Barak said ominously. "And I find thy ape face and scraggly beard amusing," Sir Haldoran replied. Barak did not even bother to draw his sword. He swung his huge arm in a wide circle and crashed his fist with stunning force against the side of the swarthy knight's helmet. Sir Haldoran's eyes glazed as he was swept from his saddle, and he made a vast clatter when he struck the ground. "Would anyone else like to comment about my beard?" Varek demanded. "Gently, my lord," Mandaral advised. He glanced down with a certain satisfaction at the unconscious form of his senseless kinsman twitching in the tall grass. "Will we docilely accept this attack on our brave companion?" one of the knights in Baron Darrigan's party demanded in a harshly accented voice. "Kill them all!" He reached for his sword. "In the instant thy sword leaves its sheath, thou art a dead man, Sir Knight," Mandarellen coolly advised him. The knight's hand froze on his sword hilt. "For shame, my lords," Mandarellen continued accusingly. "Surely ye know that by courtesy and common usage my challenge, until it is answered, guarantees my safety and that of my companions. Choose your champions or withdraw. I tire of all this, and presently will become irritable." The two parties of knights pulled back some distance to confer, and several men-at-arms came to the hilltop to pick up Sir Haldoran. "That one who was going to draw his sword was a Murgo," Varian said quietly. "I noticed that," Hadar muttered, his dark eyes glittering. "They're coming back," Durnik warned. "I will joust with thee, Sir Mandaralen," Baron Darrigan announced as he approached. "I doubt not that thy reputation is well deserved, but I also have taken the prize in no small number of tourneys. I would be honored to try a lance with thee." "And I too will try my skill against thee, Sir Knight," Baron Ulterain declared. "My arm is also feared in some parts of Erendia." "Very well," Mandaral replied. "Let us seek level ground and proceed. The day wears on, and my companions and I have business to the south." They all rode down the hill to the field below, where the two groups of knights drew up on either side of a course which had been quickly trampled out in the high yellow grass. Darrigan galloped to the far end, turned, and sat waiting, his blunted lance resting in his stirrup. "Thy courage becomes thee, my lord," Mandarellen called, taking up one of the poles Durnik had cut. "Ah, good evening, Lucy. Good to see you, my friend. How have you been?" "Hopefully well." "Thy courage becomes thee, my lord," Mandarellen called, taking up one of the poles Durnik had cut. "I shall try not to injure thee too greatly. Art thou prepared to meet my charge?" "I am," the Baron replied, lowering his visor. "I missed everybody, you know that." Mandarellen clapped down his visor, lowered his lance, and set his spurs to his warhorse. "It's probably inappropriate under the circumstances," Silk murmured, "but I can't help wishing that our overbearing friend could suffer some humiliating defeat." Mr. Wolf gave him a withering look. "Forget it." "Is he that good?" Silk asked wistfully. "Much," Wolf told him. The two knights met in the center of the course with a resounding crash, and their lances both shattered at the stunning impact, littering the trampled grass with splinters. They thundered past each other, turned, and rode back, each to his original starting place. Darrigan, Garion noticed, swayed somewhat in the saddle as he rode. The knights charged again, and their fresh lances also shattered. "I should have cut more poles," Durnik said thoughtfully. But Baron Darrigan swayed even more as he rode back this time, and on the third charge, His faltering lance glanced off Mandaroun's shield. Mandaroun's lance, however, struck true, and the Baron was hurled from his saddle by the force of their meeting. Mandaroun reined in his charger and looked down at him. "Art thou able to continue, my lord?" he asked politely. Darrigan staggered to his feet. "I do not yield," he gasped, drawing his sword. "Splendid," Mandaroun replied. "I feared that I might have done thee harm." He slid out of his saddle, drew his sword, and swung directly at Darrigan's head. The blow glanced off the Baron's hastily raised shield, and Mandaroun swung again without pause. Darrigan managed one or two feeble swings before Mandaroun's broadsword caught him full on the side of the helmet. "You like jams? Hello, Pokey Earth." He spun once and collapsed face down on the earth. "My lord," Mandaroun inquired solicitously. He reached down, rolled over his fallen opponent, and opened the dented visor of the Baron's helmet. "Art thou unwell, my lord?" he asked. "Dost thou wish to continue?" Darrigan did not reply. Blood ran freely from his nose, and his eyes were rolled back in his head. His face was blue, and the right side of his body quivered spasmodically. That's a new word. "Since this brave knight isn't able to speak for himself," Mandaroun announced, "I declare him vanquished." He looked around, his broadsword still in his hands. "Would any here gainsay my words?" There was a vast silence. "Will some few then remove him from the field?" Mandaroun suggested. "His injuries do not appear grave. A few months in bed should make him whole again." He turned to Baron All-Terrain, whose face had grown visibly pale. "Well, my lord," he said cheerfully, "shall we proceed? My companions and I are impatient to continue our journey." Sir All-Terrain was thrown to the ground on the first charge and broke his leg as he fell. He's just so happy about it. He's like, "You guys want to continue? We got places to be." "Ill luck, my lord," Mandaroun observed, approaching on foot with drawn sword. "Dost thou yield?" "I cannot stand," All-Terrain said between clenched teeth. "I have no choice but to yield." "And I and my companions may continue our journey?" "Ye may freely depart," the man on the ground replied painfully. "Not just yet," a harsh voice interrupted. The armored Murgo pushed his horse through the crowd of other mounted knights until he was directly in front of Mandaroun. "I thought he might decide to interfere," Aunt Pole said quietly. She dismounted and stepped out onto the hoof-churned course. "Move out of the way, Mandaroun," she told the knight. "Reminds you a bit of Leonidas 300? Give him a spear, he could hold off just as many." That was a fun movie. "Move out of the way, Mandaroun," she told the knight. "Nay, my lady," Mandaroun protested. Wolf barked sharply. "Move, Mandaroun." Mandaroun looked startled and stepped aside. "Well, Grollen?" Aunt Pole challenged, pushing back her hood. The mounted man's eyes widened as he saw the white lock in her hair, and then he raised his hand almost despairingly, muttering rapidly under his breath. Once again, Garion felt that strange surge, and the hollow roaring filled his mind. For an instant, Aunt Pole's figure seemed surrounded by a kind of greenish light. She waved her hand indifferently, and the light disappeared. You must be out of practice, she told him. Would you like to try again? The Grollen raised both his hands this time, but got no further. Maneuvering his horse carefully behind the armored man, Dernick had closed on him. With both hands, he raised his axe and smashed it down directly on top of the Grollem's helmet. Dernick! Antpole shouted. Get away! But the smith, his face set grimly, swung again, and the Grollum slid senseless from his saddle with a crash. You fool! Antpole raged. What do you think you're doing? I was attacking you, Mistress Pole, Dernick explained, his eyes still hot. Get down off that horse. He slid down. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? She demanded. He could have killed you. I will protect you, Mistress Pole, Dernick replied stubbornly. I'm not a warrior or a magician, but I won't let anybody try to hurt you. Her eyes widened in surprise for an instant, then narrowed and softened. Arian, who had known her from childhood, recognized her rapid changes of emotion. Without warning, she suddenly embraced the startled Dernick. You great, clumsy dear fool, she said. Never do that again. Never. You almost made my heart stop. Arian looked away with a strange lump in his throat and saw the brief, sly smile that flickered across Mr. Wolf's face. A peculiar change had come over the knights lining the sides of the course. Several of them were looking around with amazed expressions of men who had just been roused from some terrible dream. Others seemed suddenly lost in thought. Sir Ulterain struggled to rise. Nay, my lord, Vanderellen told him, pressing him gently back down. Thou wilt do thyself injury. What have we done? The Baron groaned, his face anguished. Mr. Wolf dismounted and knelt beside the injured man. It wasn't your fault, he informed the Baron. Your war was the Murgo's doing. He twisted your minds and set you on each other. Sorcery! Ulterain gasped, his face growing pale. Wolf nodded. He's not really a Murgo, but a Grollen priest. The spell is now broken? Wolf nodded again, glancing at the unconscious Grollen. Chain the Murgo, the Baron ordered the assembled knights. He looked back at Wolf. We have ways of dealing with sorcerers, he said grimly. We will use the occasion to celebrate the end of our unnatural war. This Grollen sorcerer hath cast his last enchantment. Good, Wolf replied with a bleak smile. Sir Manderellen, Baron Ulterain said, wincing as he shifted his broken leg. In what way may we repay thee and thy companions for bringing us to our senses? That peace hath been restored is reward enough, Manderellen replied somewhat pompously. For as all the world knows, I am the most peace-loving man in the kingdom. Glanced once at Leldorn lying nearby, on the ground in his litter. And Varus, thank you for following, and welcome. He glanced once at Leldorn lying nearby on the ground in his litter, and a thought seemed to occur to him. I would, however, ask a boon of thee. We have in our company a brave stirring youth of noble family who hath suffered grievous injury. We would leave him, if we might, in thy care. His presence shall honor me, Sir Manderellen, Ulterain assented immediately. The women of my household will care for him most tenderly. He spoke briefly to one of his retainers, and the man mounted and rode quickly toward one of the nearby castles. Not going to leave me behind, Leldorn protested weakly. I'll be able to ride in a day or so. He began to cough raggingly. I think not, Mandaround disagreed with a cool expression. The results of thy wounding have not yet run their natural course. I won't stay with Mimbrates, Leldorn insisted. I'd rather take my chances on the road. Young Leldorin, Mandaround replied bluntly, even harshly. I know thy distaste for the men of Mimbre. Thy wound, however, will soon begin to obsess, and then to suppurate, and raging fever and delirium will afflict thee, making thy presence a burden upon us. We have not the time to care for thee, and thy sore need would delay us in our quest. Wall the Goat, thank you for following. And welcome to you too. Arian gasped at the brutal directness of the knight's word. If it's a from Valor Discount status. You're not wrong. Lazarus, thank you for following. And ASMR Lurker, thank you for following as well. Hope you guys enjoy your stay. Arian gasped at the brutal directness of the knight's words. He glared at Mandarellan with something very close to hatred. Leldorn's face, however, had gone white. Thank you for pointing that out to me, Sir Mandarellan, he said stiffly. I should have considered it myself. If you'll help me to my horse, I'll leave immediately. You'll stay right where you are, Antpole told him flatly. Baron Alterane's retainer returned with a group of household servants and a blonde girl of about 17 wearing a rose-colored gown of stiff brocade and a velvet cloak of teal. My younger sister, Lady Ariana, Alterane introduced her. She's a spirited girl, and though she is young, she is already well versed in the care of the sick. We won't trouble her for long, my lord, Leldorn declared. I'll be returning to Astoria within a week. Lady Ariana laid a professional hand to his forehead. Nay, good youth, she disagreed. My visit, I think, will be protracted. I'll leave within the week, Leldorn repeated stubbornly. She shrugged. As it please thee. I expect that my brother will be able to spare some few servants to follow after thee, to provide thee that decent burial which, if I misjudge not, thou wilt require before thou hast gone 10 leagues. Leldorn blinked. Antpole took Lady Ariana to one side and spoke with her at some length, giving her a small packet of herbs and certain instructions. Leldorn motioned to Garion, and Garion went to him immediately and knelt beside the litter. So it ends, the young man murmured. I wish I could go on with you. You'll be well in no time at all, Garion assured him, knowing that it wasn't true. Maybe you can catch up with us later. Leldorn shook his head. No, he disagreed. I'm afraid not. He began to cough again, the spasm seeming to tear at his lungs. We don't have much time, my friend, he gasped weakly, so listen carefully. Arian, near tears, took his friend's hand. You remember what we were talking about that morning after we left my uncle's house? Arian nodded. You said that I was the one who'd have to decide if we were to break our pledge to Torsen and the others to keep silent. I remember, Garion told him. All right, Leldorn decided. I've decided. I release you from your pledge. Do what you have to do. It'd be better if you told my grandfather about it yourself, Lildoran, Garion protested. I can't, Garion, Lildoran groaned. The words would stick in my throat. I'm sorry, but it's the way I am. I know that Nachak's only using us, but I gave the others my word. I'm an Arend, Garion. I'll keep my word, even though I know it's wrong. So it's up to you. You're going to have to keep Nachak from destroying my country. I want you to go straight to the king himself. To the king? He'd never believe me. Make him believe you. Tell him everything. Arian shook his head firmly. I won't tell him your name, he declared, or Torresin's. You know what he'd do to you if I did. He don't matter, Lildoran insisted, coughing again. I'll tell him about Nachak, Garion said stubbornly, but not about you. Where do I tell him to find the Murgo? Oh no, Lildoran replied, his voice very weak now. Jack's the ambassador to the court at Vomimbre. He's the personal representative of Tar Urgis, king of the Murgos. Arian was stunned at the implications of that. He's got all the gold from the bottomless mines of Cathol Murgos at his command, Lildoran continued. The plot he gave my friends and me could be just one of a dozen or more, all aimed at destroying Arendia. You've got to stop him, Garion. Promise me. The pale young man's eyes were feverish, and his grip on Garion's hand tightened. I'll stop him, Lildoran, Garion vowed. I don't know how yet, but one way or another, I'll stop him. Lildoran sank weakly back on the litter, his strength seeming to run out, as if the necessity for extracting that promise had been the only thing sustaining him. Bye, Lildoran, Garion said softly, his eyes filling with tears. Bye, my friend, Lildoran barely more than whispered, and then his eyes closed, and the hand gripping Garion's went limp. Garion stared at him with a dreadful fear until he saw the faint flutter of his pulse in the hollow of his throat. Lildoran was still alive, if only barely. Garion tenderly put down his friend's hand and pulled the rough gray blanket up around his shoulders. Then he stood up and walked quickly away with tears running down his cheeks. The rest of the farewells were brief, and they were mounted and rode at a trot toward the Great West Road. There were a few cheers from the serfs and pikemen as they passed, but in the distance there was another sound. Ow. Sorry. The women from the villages had come out to search for their men among their bodies littering the field, and their wails and shrieks mocked the cheers. With deliberate purpose, Garion pushed his horse forward until he drew in beside Mandaralin. I have something to say to you, he said hotly. You aren't going to like it, but I don't really care. Oh? The knight replied mildly. I think the way you talked to Lildoran back there was cruel and disgusting, Garion told him. You might think you're the greatest knight in the world, but I think you're a loudmouth braggart with no more compassion than a block of stone. And if you don't like it, what do you plan to do about it? Ah, Mandaralin said, that. I think thou hast misunderstood my young friend. It was necessary in order to save his life. The Asturian youth is very brave, and so gives no thoughts to himself. Had I not spoken so to him, he would surely have insisted upon continuing with us, and would soon have died. hide, Arian scoffed. Aunt Pole, Aunt Pole could have cured him. It was the Lady Polgara herself who informed me that his life was in danger, Mandarel replied. His honor would not permit him to seek proper care, but that same honor prevailed upon him to remain behind lest he delay us. The knight smiled wryly. He will, I think, be no fonder of me for my words than thou art, but he will be alive. That's what matters, is it not? Arian stared at the arrogant seeming membrate, his anger suddenly robbed of its target. With painful clarity, he realized that he had just made a fool of himself. I'm sorry, he apologized grudgingly. I didn't realize what you were doing. Mandarellen shrugged. It's not important. I'm frequently misunderstood. As long as I know that my motives are good, however, I'm seldom very concerned with the opinions of others. I'm glad, though, that I have the opportunity to explain this to thee. Thou art to be my companion, and it ill behooves companions to have misapprehensions about each other. They rode on in silence, as Garion struggled to readjust his thinking. There was, it seemed, much more to Mandarellen than he had suspected. He reached the highway, then and turned south again, under a threatening sky. And that was the end of Chapter 7. Wow. What a bombastic chapter. Plenty of fun to be had. Drama, action, magic, foreshadowing, plot thickening. Good stuff there. So, before I move on to Chapter 8, I'm going to go ahead and take a small break to drink some water and stretch a little bit. Feel free to relax or maybe do the same. Stay hydrated, everybody, and I will be back in a few minutes. Thank you, Core. Sometimes I hit the funny little button on the microphone. We all love a nice mute button, don't we? Sometimes good for ourselves. But now that I'm back, let's go ahead and get right into Chapter 8. We do love scuff. Listen, if there's no scuff, can you really call it a real stream? It's the scuff that adds the zest, the life, to any stream. It's gonna happen. Might as well have fun with it. And so, let's begin with Chapter 8 of The Queen of Sorcery, Book 2 of the Belgariad series. If you're curious about the other chapters, well, you have to sift through them on YouTube. Chapter 8. The Orendish Plain was a vast rolling grassland, only sparsely settled. The wind sweeping across the dried grass was raw and chill, and dirty-looking clouds scudded overhead as they rode. The necessity for leaving the injured Leldorn behind had put them all into a melancholy mood, and for the most part, they traveled in silence for the next several days. Arian rode at the rear with Hedar and the pack horses, doing his best to stay away from Mandaralin. Hedar was a silent man who seemed undisturbed by hours of riding without conversation, but after 2 days of this, Arian made a deliberate effort to draw the hawk-faced Algar out. "Why is it that you hate Murgos so much, Hedar?" he asked, for want of something better to say. "All the Lorns hate Murgos," Hedar answered quietly. "Yes," Arian admitted, "but it seems to be something personal with you. Why is that?" Hedar shifted in his saddle, his leather clothes creaking. "I killed my parents," he replied. Arian felt a sudden shock as the Algar's words struck a responsive note. "How did it happen?" he asked, before he realized that Hedar might prefer not to talk about it. "I was 7, Hedar told him in an unemotional voice. "We were going to visit my mother's family. She was from a different clan. We had to pass near the eastern escarpment, and a Murgo raiding party caught us. My mother's horse stumbled, and she was thrown. The Murgos were on us before my father and I could get her back on the horse. They took a long time to kill my parents. I remember that my mother screamed once, near the end." The Algar's face was bleak as rock, and his flat, quiet voice made his story seem that much more dreadful. "What's up? Batman?" Wait, did they actually? That's kind of scary, Core. I hope it's for a good reason that they screamed. Okay. That's a little, We hope everything is okay. 4 p.m. What good reason is there? I mean, I can think of a few reasons. We got video games, we got movies, we have stepping on a Lego. I hope it's not that bad. Listen. One cannot blame me for trying to keep a positive mindset. Alright, back to it. You're welcome, Core. After my parents were dead, the Murgos tied a rope around my feet and dragged me behind one of their horses, he continued. When the rope finally broke, they thought I was dead, and they all rode off. We're laughing about it as I recall. Shohag found me a couple of days later. As clearly as if he had been there, Garion had a momentary picture of a child dreadfully injured and alone, wandering in the emptiness of eastern Algeria with only grief and a terrible hatred keeping him alive. Killed my first Murgo when I was 10, Edar went on in the same flat voice. He was trying to escape from us, and I rode him down and put a javelin between his shoulders. He screamed when the javelin went through him. That made me feel better. Shohag thought that if he made me watch the Murgo die, it might cure me of the hatred. He was wrong about that, though. The tall Algar's face was expressionless, and his wind-whipped scalp lock tossed and flowed out behind him. There was a kind of emptiness about him, as if he were devoid of any feeling but that one driving compulsion. For an instant, Garion dimly understood what Mr. Wolf had been driving at when he had warned about the danger of becoming obsessed with a desire for revenge. He pushed the notion out of his mind. If Hedar could live with it, so could he. He felt a sudden fierce admiration for this lonely hunter in black leather. Mr. Wolf was deep in conversation with Mandaralin, and the two of them loitered until Hedar and Garion caught up with them. For a time, they rode along together. It is our nature, the knight in his gleaming armor was saying in a melancholy voice. We are overproud, and it is our pride that dooms our poor Arendia to internecine war. That can be cured, Mr. Wolf said. How? Mandaralin asked. It is in our blood. I myself am the most peaceful of men, but even I am subject to our national disease. Moreover, our divisions are too great, too buried in our history, and our souls to be purged away. The peace will not last, my friend. Even now, Asturian arrows sing in the forests, seeking Mimbre targets, and Mimbre, in reprisal, burns Asturian houses and butchers hostages. War is inevitable, I fear. No, Wolf disagreed. It's not. How may it be prevented? Mandaralin demanded. Who can cure our insanity? I will, if I have to, Wolf told him quietly, pushing back his gray hood. Mandaralin smiled wanly. I appreciate thy good intentions, Belgarath. It is impossible, even for thee. Nothing is actually impossible, Mandaralin, Wolf answered in a matter-of-fact voice. Most of the time, I prefer not to interfere with other people's amusements, but I can't afford to have Arendia going up in flames just now. If I have to, I'll step in and put a stop to any more foolishness. Hast thou in truth such power? Mandaralin asked somewhat wistfully, as if he could not quite bring himself to believe it. Yes, Wolf replied prosaically, scratching at his white short beard. As a matter of fact, I do. Mandaralin's face grew troubled, even a bit awed at the old man's quiet statement, and Garion found his grandfather's declaration profoundly disturbing. If Wolf could actually stop a war single-handedly, he'd have no difficulty at all thwarting Garion's own plans for revenge. There was something else to worry about. Then, Silk rode back toward them. Great Bear's just ahead, the rat-faced man announced. Do we want to stop, or should we go around it? We might as well stop, Wolf decided. It's almost evening, and we need some supplies. The horses could use some rest too, Edar said. They're starting to complain. You should have told me, Wolf said, glancing back at the pack train. They're not really in bad shape yet, Edar informed him, but they're starting to feel sorry for themselves. Ichi! So good to see you. It's been so long. Welcome in. How have you been? Not really in bad shape yet, Hedar informed him, but they're starting to feel sorry for themselves. They're exaggerating, of course, but a little rest wouldn't hurt them. Yeah, I did take that pretty long break, but now I'm back to streaming again. Plenty of shenanigans to... well, they're planned, I guess, to execute. Lots of irons in the fire, as they say. I did go to a con. Rested, relaxed, still dying to work, but you know, I do always feel better when I'm on stream with you guys. It's fun and relaxing. They're exaggerating, of course, but a little rest wouldn't hurt them. Exaggerating? Silk sounded shocked. You don't mean to say that horses can actually lie, do you? Hadar shrugged. Of course. They lie all the time. They're very good at it. For a moment, Silk looked outraged at the thought, and then he suddenly laughed. Somehow, that restores my faith in the order of the universe, he declared. Wolf looked pained. Silk, he said pointedly, you're a very evil man. Did you know that? One does one's best, Silk replied mockingly. The Orendish Fair lay at the intersection of the Great West Road and the mountain track leading down out of Ulgoland. It was a vast collection of blue, red, and yellow tents and broad striped pavilions stretching for a league or more in every direction. A very calming voice, which is ironic considering what's going on in the story at times. Thank you. You're not wrong. It's fun to read, though. Plus, I am trying to relax everyone. As bombastic as I could be. And we have the ASMR tag on. Would not be appropriate. It appeared like a brightly hued city in the midst of the dun-colored plain, and its brilliant pennons snapped bravely in the endless wind under a lowering sky. I hope I'll have time to do some business, Silk said as they rode down the long hill toward the fair. The little man's sharp nose was twitching. I'm starting to get out of practice. A half-dozen mud-smeared beggars crouched miserably beside the road, their hands outstretched. Mandarin paused and scattered some coins among them. You shouldn't encourage them, Barak growled. Charity is both a duty and a privilege, my Lord Barak, Mandarin replied. Why don't they build houses here? Garion asked Silk, as they approached the central part of the fair. Nobody stays here that long, Silk explained. The fair is always here, but the population's very fluid. Besides, buildings are taxed. Tents aren't. So basically, we made it to a Renaissance fair. In a Renaissance time. Nice. Many Many of the merchants who came out of their tents to watch the party pass seemed to know Silk, and some of them greeted him warily, suspicion plainly written on their faces. I see that your reputations preceded you, Silk, Rack observed dryly. Silk shrugged. The price of fame. Isn't there some danger that somebody'll recognize you as that other merchant? Dernick asked. The one the Murgos are looking for? You mean Ambar? Not very likely. Ambar doesn't come to Rendia very often, and he and Radek don't look a bit alike. They're the same man, Dernick objected. They're both you. Ah, Silk said, raising one finger. You and I both know that, but they don't. To you, I always look like myself, but to others I look quite different. Dernick looked profoundly skeptical. Radek, old friend, a bald Trazian merchant called from a nearby tent. Delvor, Silk replied delightedly. I haven't seen you in years. You look prosperous, the bald man observed. Getting by, Silk replied modestly. What are you dealing in now? I've got a few Malorian carpets, Delvor told him. Some of the local nobles are interested, but they don't like the price. His hands, however, were already speaking of other matters. Your uncle sent out word that we were to help you if necessary. Do you need anything? What are you carrying in your packs? He said aloud. Sandarian woolens, Silk answered, and a few other odds and ends. Have you seen any Murgos here at the fair? One, but he left for Vomimbre a week ago. There are some Nadrax on the far side of the fair, though. They're a long way from home, Silk gestured. Are they really in business? It's hard to say, Delvor answered. Can you put us up for a day or so? I'm sure we can work something out, Delvor replied with a sly twinkle in his eyes. Silk's fingers betrayed his shock at the suggestion. Business is business, after all, Delvor gestured. You must come inside, he said aloud. Take a cup of wine, have some supper. We have years of catching up to do. We'd be delighted, Silk returned, somewhat sourly. Could it be that you've met your match, Prince Keldar? Aunt Pole inquired softly, with a faint smile as the little man helped her down from her horse in front of Delvor's brightly striped pavilion. Delvor? Hardly. He's been trying to get even with me for years, ever since a ploy of mine in Yargorak cost him a fortune. I'll let him think he's got me for a while, though. It'll make him feel good, and I'll enjoy it that much more when I pull the rug out from under him. She laughed. You're incorrigible. I love Silk. What a sneaky bastard. He winked at her. The interior of Delvor's main pavilion was ruddy in the light of several glowing braziers that put out a welcome warmth. The floor was covered with a deep blue carpet, and large red cushions were scattered here and there to sit upon. Once they were inside, Silk quickly made the introductions. I'm honored, Ancient One, Delvor murmured, bowing deeply to Mr. Wolf and then to Aunt Pole. What can I do to help? Right now we need information more than anything, Wolf replied, pulling off his heavy cloak. We ran into a Grolem stirring up trouble a few days north of here. Kenny knows about and find out what's happening between here and Vomimbre. I'd like to avoid any more neighborhood squabbles if possible. I'll make inquiries, Delvor promised. I'll be moving around too, Silk said. Between us, Delvor and I should be able to sift out most of the loose information in the fair. Wolf looked at him inquiringly. Radek of Baktor never passes up a chance to do business, the little man explained just a bit too quickly. It'd look very strange if he stayed in Delvor's tent. I see, Wolf said. We wouldn't want to spoil our disguise now, would we? Silk asked innocently. His long nose, however, was twitching even more violently. Wolf surrendered. All right, but don't get exotic. I don't want a crowd of outraged customers outside the tent in the morning howling for your head. Belvoir's porters took the packs from the spare horses, and one of them showed Hedar the way to the horse pens on the outskirts of the fair. Silk began rummaging through the packs. A myriad of small, expensive items began to pile up on Delvor's carpet as Silk's quick hands dipped into the corners of folds of the wool cloth. I wondered why you needed so much money in Kamar, Wolf commented dryly. Just part of the disguise, Silk replied. Radek always has a few curios with him for trade along the way. That's a very convenient explanation, Rek observed, but I wouldn't run it into the ground if I were you. If I can't double our friend's money, in the next hour I'll retire permanently, Silk promised. Oh, I almost forgot. I'll need Garion to act as a porter for me. Radek always has at least one porter. Try not to corrupt him too much, Antpol said. Silk bowed extravagantly and set his black velvet cap at a jaunty angle. With Garion at his heels, carrying a stout sack of his treasures, he swaggered out into the great Arendis fair like a man going into battle. The fat Tolnantrin 3 tents down the way proved troublesome and succeeded in getting a jeweled dagger away from Silk for only 3 times what it was worth. But 2 Arendis merchants in a row bought identical silver goblets at prices which, though widely different, more than made up for that setback. I love to deal with the Wrens, Silk gloated, as they moved on down the muddy streets between the pavilions. The sly little Dresnian moved through the fair, wreaking havoc as he went. When he could not sell, he bought. When he could not buy, he traded. And when he could not trade, he dredged for gossip and information. Some of the merchants, wiser than their fellows, saw him coming and promptly hid from him. Garion, swept along by the little man's enthusiasm, began to understand his friend's fascination with this game, where profit was secondary to the satisfaction of besting an opponent. Silk's predations were broadly ecumenical. He was willing to deal with anyone. He met them all on their own ground. Tolnandrins, Arens, Terex, fellow Drasnians, Sendars, all fell before him. By mid-afternoon, he had disposed of all of what he had bought in Kamar. His full purse jingled, and the sack on Garion's shoulder was still as heavy, but now it contained entirely new merchandise. Silk, however, was frowning. He walked along, bouncing a small, exquisitely blown glass bottle on the palm of his hand. He had traded 2 ivory-bound books of Westlight verse to a ribbon for the little bottle of perfume. What's the trouble? Garion asked him as they walked back toward Delvor's pavilions. I'm not sure who won, Silk told him shortly. What? I don't have any idea what this is worth. Why did you take it then? I didn't want him to know that I didn't know its value. Sell it to someone else. How can I sell it if I don't know what to ask for it? If I ask too much, nobody will talk to me, and if I ask too little, I'll be laughed out of the fair. Garion started to chuckle. I don't see that it's all that funny, Garion, Silk said sensitively. He remained moody and irritable as they entered the pavilion. There's the profit I promised you, he told Mr. Wolf somewhat ungraciously as he poured coins to the old man's hand. "What's bothering you?" Wolf asked, eyeing the little man's grumpy face. "Nothing," Silk replied shortly. Then glanced over at Aunt Pole, and a broad smile suddenly appeared on his face. He crossed to her and bowed. "My dear Lady Polgara, please accept this trifling memento of my regard for you." With a flourish, he presented the perfume bottle to her. Aunt Pole's look was a peculiar mixture of pleasure and suspicion. She took the small bottle and carefully worked out the tightly fitting stopper. Then, with a delicate gesture, she touched the stopper to the inside of her wrist and raised the wrist to her face to catch the fragrance. Fragrance, not fragrance. "Why, Keldar," she exclaimed with delight, "this is a princely gift." Silk's smile turned a bit sickly, and he peered sharply at her, trying to determine if she were serious or not. Then he sighed and went outside, muttering darkly to himself about the duplicity of Rivens. Belvoir returned not long afterward, dropping his striped cloak in one corner, and held out his hand to one of the glowing braziers. "As nearly as I was able to find out, things are quiet between here and Vomimbre," reported to Mr. Wolf. "But 5 Murgos just rode into the fair, with 24 thulls behind them." Edar looked up quickly, his hawk face alert. Wolf frowned. Did they come from the north or the south? They claim to have come from Vomimbre, but there's red clay on the thull's boots. I don't think there's any clay between here and Vomimbre, is there? "None," Mandaron declared firmly. "The only clay in the region is to the north." Wolf nodded. "Get Silk back inside," he told Barak. Barak went to the tent flap. "Couldn't it just be a coincidence?" Dernek wondered. "I don't think we want to take that chance," Wolf answered. "We'll wait until the fair settles down for the night, and then slip away." "Hi, Soleil." "Oh, it's that little hedgehog with a bow tie." "Whatever that is, your little avatar is super cute." "Good to see you, though, Soleil." "I don't think we want to take that chance," Wolf answered. "We'll wait until the fair settles down for the night, and then slip away." Silk came back inside, and he and Delvor spoke together briefly. "It won't take the Murgos long to find out we've been here," Barak rumbled, looking thoughtfully at his red beard. "Then we'll have them dogging our heels every step of the way from here to Vomimbre. Wouldn't it simplify things if Hedar, Mandarellen, and I go pick a fight with them? 5 dead Murgos aren't going to follow anybody." Hedar nodded with a certain dreadful eagerness. "I don't know if that would set too well with the Tolnedran legionnaires who police the fair," Silk drawled. "How we all doing? Well, I'm doing quite well. How are you? And how is everybody else if you're not just relaxing?" "Policemen seem to worry about unexplained bodies. It upsets their sense of neatness." Barak shrugged. "It was a thought." "I've got an idea," Delvor said, pulling on his cloak again. "They set up their tents near the pavilions of the Nadrax. I'll go do some business with them." He started toward the tent flap, then paused. "I don't know if it means anything," he told them, "but I found out that the leader is a Murgo named Asherak." Arian felt a sudden chill at the mention of the name. Barak whistled and looked suddenly very grim. "We're going to have to attend to that one sooner or later, Belgarath," he declared. "You know him?" Belvoir did not seem very surprised. We've met a time or two, Silk replied in an offhand way. He's starting to make a nuisance of himself, Aunt Pole agreed. I'll get started, Delvor said. Arian lifted the tent flap to allow Delvor to leave, but as he glanced outside, he let out a startled gasp and jerked the flap shut again. What's the matter? Silk asked him. I think I just saw Brill out there in the street. Let me see, Durnick said. His fingers parted the flap slightly, and he and Garion both peered out. A slovenly figure loitered in the muddy street outside. Brill had not changed much since they'd left Falder's farm. His tunic and hose were still patched and stained. His face was still unshaven, and his cast eye still gleamed with a kind of unwholesome whiteness. It's Brill, all right, Durnick confirmed. He's close enough for me to smell him. Delvor looked at the smith inquiringly. Brill bathes irregularly, Durnick explained. He's a fragrant sort of fellow. May I? Delvor asked politely. He glanced out over Durnick's shoulder. Ah, he said, that one. He works with an Adrax. I thought that was a little strange, but he didn't seem important, so I didn't bother to investigate. Durnick, Wolf said quickly, step outside for a moment. Make sure he sees you, but don't let him know that you know he's there. After he sees you, come back inside. Hurry, we don't want to let him get away. Durnick looked baffled, but he lifted the tent flap and stepped out. What are you up to, Father? Aunt Pole asked rather sharply. Don't just stand there smirking, old man. That's very irritating. It's perfect, Wolf chortled, rubbing his hands together. Durnick came back in, his face worried. He saw me, he reported. Are you sure this is a good idea? Of course, Wolf replied. Ashrak's obviously here because of us, and he's going to be looking all over the fair for us. Why make it easy for him? Aunt Pole asked. We won't, Wolf replied. Ashrak's used Brill before. In Muros, remember? He brought Brill down here because Brill would recognize you or me or Durnick or Garion. Probably Barak too, and maybe Silk. Is he still out there? Garion peered out through the narrow opening. After a moment, he saw the unkempt Brill half hidden between two tents across the street. He's still there, he answered. We'll want to keep him there, Wolf said. We'll have to be sure that he doesn't get bored and go back to report to Ashrak that he's found us. Silk looked at Delvor, and they both began to laugh. What's funny? Barak demanded suspiciously. You almost have to be a Dresden to appreciate it, Silk replied. He looked at Wolf admiringly. Sometimes you amaze me, old friend. Mr. Wolf winked at him. My plan still escapes me, Mandaran confessed. May I? Silk asked Wolf. He turned back to the night. It goes like this, Mandaran. Ashrak's counting on Brill to find us for him, but as long as we keep Brill interested enough, he'll delay going back to tell Ashrak where we are. We've captured Ashrak's eyes, and that puts him at quite a disadvantage. What? Will this curious Senbao not follow us as soon as we leave our tent? Mandaran asked. When we ride from the fair, the Murgers will be immediately behind us. The back wall of a tent is only canvas, Mandaran, Silk pointed out gently. With a sharp knife, you can make as many doors in it as you like. Delvor winced slightly, then sighed. I'll go see the Murgos, he said. I think I can delay them even more. Durnick and I'll go out with you, Durnick told his bald friend. You go one way, and we'll go another. Brill will follow us, and we can lead him back here. Delvor nodded, and the three of them went out. Isn't all this unnecessarily complicated? Barak asked sourly. Brill doesn't know Hedar. Why not just have Hedar slip out the back, circle around behind him, and stick a knife between his ribs? Then we could stuff him in a sack and drop him in a ditch somewhere after we leave the fair. Wolf shook his head. Ashrak would miss him, he replied. I want him to tell the Murgos that we're in this tent. With any luck, they'll sit outside for a day or so before they realize that we're gone. For the next several hours, various members of the party went out into the street in front of the tent on short and wholly imaginary errands to hold the attention of the lurking Brill. When Garion stepped out into the gathering darkness, he put on a show of unconcern, although his skin prickled as he felt Brill's eyes on him. He went into Delvor's supply tent and waited for several minutes. The noise from the tavern pavilion several rows of tents over seemed very loud in the growing stillness of the fair, as Garion waited nervously in the dark supply tent. Finally, he drew up a deep breath and went out again, one arm tucked up as if he were carrying something. I found it, Durnick, he announced as he re-entered the main pavilion. There's no need to improvise, dear, Aunt Pole remarked. I just wanted it to sound natural, he replied innocently. Delvor returned soon after that, and they all waited at the warm tent as it grew darker outside and the streets emptied. Once it was fully dark, Delvor's porters pulled the packs out through a slit in the back of the tent. Silk, Delvor, and Hedar went with them to the horse pens on the outskirts of the fair, while the rest of them remained long enough to keep Brill from losing interest. In a final attempt at misdirection, Mr. Wolf and Barak went outside to discuss the probable conditions of the road to Pralgu in Ulgoland. It might not work, Wolf admitted as he and the big red-bearded man came back inside. Ashrak's sure to know that we're following Zedar south, but if Brill tells him we're going to Pralgu, it might make him divide his forces to cover both roads. He looked around inside the tent. All right, he said. Let's go. One by one, they squeezed out through the slit in the back of the tent and crept into the next street. Then, walking at a normal pace like serious people on honest business, they proceeded toward the horse pens. They passed the tavern pavilion where several men were singing. The streets were mostly empty by now, and the night breeze brushed the city of tents, fluttering the pennons and banners. Then they reached the edge of the fair where Silk, Delvor, and Hedar waited with their mounts. Good luck, Delvor said as they prepared to mount. I'll delay the Murgos for as long as I can. Silk shook his friend's hand. I'd still like to know where you got those lead coins. Delvor winked at him. What's this? Wolf asked. Delvor's got some Tolnedran crowns stamped out of lead and gilded over, Silk told him. He hid some of them in the Murgos' tent, and tomorrow morning he's going to go to the Legionnaires with a few of them and accuse the Murgos of passing them. When the Legionnaires search the Murgos' tent, they're sure to find the others. Money's awfully important to Tolnedrans, Barak observed. If the Legionnaires get excited enough about those coins, they might start hanging people. Delvor smirked. Wouldn't that be a terrible shame? They mounted then and rode away from the horse pens toward the highway. It was a cloudy night, and once they were out in the open, the breeze was noticeably brisk. Behind them, the fair gleamed and twinkled under the night sky like some vast city. Arian drew his cloak about him. It was a lonely feeling to be on a dark road on a windy night when everyone else in the world had a fire and a bed and walls around him. Then they they reached the Great West Road stretching pale and empty across the dark, rolling, horrendous plain, and turned south again. And that was the end of Chapter 8. Well, that was fun. Oh, I do love this book. The ups and downs as it slowly escalates more and more as we continue on this grand adventure. However, I do think that this will be what I decide to end for tonight. Let's see if I can't find someone to raid. Someone nice and cozy to keep up the vibes. However, I do have to go through an ad first. Of course, Vi. It's always a pleasure to go and give a stream. This guy's doing popping and stuff. I think... Oh, he's kind of giggly too. I'll give it a try. So everyone, rest well, take care, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good night, everyone. Sweet dreams when you rest. It's true we haven't raided duckies. We'll do it soon. And Neo Nyan Nyan, thank you for the follow. Take care too, Soleil. Now,